In 1984, Suzuki's GSX-R exploded onto the scene. Lighter, sharper, and faster than anything before, it was meant to shatter limits and democratize true racing performance. But decades later, the bike that had been hailed as the ultimate rider's machine became a punchline. It was tainted by reckless stunts and viral infamy. How did a revolution turn into a reputation crisis, and what was lost in the chaos? The real story behind this ultimate Suzuki begins where most people stop looking. Etsuo Yokuchi paced the factory floor, blueprints rolled under his arm, surrounded by a team who understood what was at stake. For decades, superbikes had followed a simple rule. Steel frames were heavy and sturdy, built for straight-line speed, but sluggish in corners. Yokuchi saw something different. He believed the real leap was not chasing more horsepower, but stripping away every ounce that did not serve speed or control. Suzuki's leadership bristled at the idea of abandoning steel. No Japanese manufacturer had ever risked a mass-produced aluminum frame for a street bike. It was too soft, too expensive, too unproven. But Yokuchi pressed on, running a teardown study on the old GS750, painting each part blue for durability and red for weakness, to prove that most of the steel was just dead weight. His team set an audacious target, a 750 cubic centimeter bike weighing under 400 pounds, with a frame that would outclass anything on the road or track. The result was a twin-spar aluminum chassis, inspired by endurance racers, that delivered a 60% increase in rigidity over Suzuki's own steel predecessors. It was not just lighter, it was sharper, more precise, letting the rider feel every inch of the road. The claim of under 400 pounds was not just marketing, it was a declaration. Suddenly, a street-legal motorcycle could flick side to side like a Grand Prix machine, letting skilled riders push far past the limits of what had come before. This gamble did not just change Suzuki's fortunes, it redrew the boundaries of what a production sport bike could be. Enthusiasts in their 40s still talk about that first ride, the sense that every movement counted, every corner begged to be attacked. The aluminum frame made the GSX-R a weapon in the hands of the committed, not just another fast bike. Yokuchi's risk gave the world a machine that did not compromise, and for a moment, it felt like the rules had been rewritten. Heat was the enemy of every high-performance engine in the 1980s. Most rivals turned to bulky radiators and liquid cooling, trading simplicity for stability. Suzuki's answer was different, and surprisingly clever. The GSX-R's engineers developed the Suzuki Advanced Cooling System, SACS, a hybrid approach that used both air and oil to keep temperatures under control. Instead of relying solely on airflow, SACS pumped a high volume of oil through the hottest parts of the engine, especially around the exhaust valves and combustion chamber. The oil then traveled through a large external cooler, shedding heat before looping back into the motor. This system allowed the GSX-R's engine to run at higher compression and revs, without the weight or complexity of water cooling. But cooling alone wasn't enough. The combustion chamber itself held another secret, the Twin Swirl Combustion Chamber, TSCC. This design used carefully shaped intake ports to create two strong swirling currents of air-fuel mixture inside each cylinder. As the piston compressed the charge, these swirls collided, mixing the fuel more thoroughly and burning it faster and cleaner. The result was a sharp throttle response and real power at high revs, without sacrificing reliability. Together, SACS and TSCC turned the GSX-R's engine into something rare, a high-strung, race-ready motor that could take abuse lap after lap. Riders could push to redline lap after lap, and the engine would shrug it off. For club racers and weekend warriors, this meant less time worrying about blown head gaskets or heat soak, and more time chasing lap times. Suzuki's solution wasn't just about making a bike lighter. It was about making performance sustainable, race after race. The GSX-R wasn't just fast, it was built to last, and that reliability would soon be tested on the world's toughest tracks. Kevin Schwantz rolled his new GSX-R 750 onto the grid at Daytona in March 1986, a relative unknown outside the paddock, astride a machine that most of the field considered a risky experiment. The air was thick with skepticism, Rivals eyed the Suzuki's aluminum frame and oil-cooled engine, whispering that it would not last the distance, let alone threaten the podium. Mechanics from other teams shook their heads, betting the rookie would be lucky to finish. But when the flag dropped, Schwantz made it clear he had not come to play safe. Lap after lap, he pushed the Suzuki harder, diving into corners with a confidence that bordered on reckless. Each time he fired out onto the banking, the GSX-R responded, its light chassis and sharp power delivery letting him close gaps that should have been out of reach. Midway through the race, the impossible began to unfold. Schwantz was not just keeping up, he was carving through the field, passing established names who had written him off at the start. The crowd started to buzz, sensing that something unusual was happening. By the closing laps, the Suzuki was in podium contention, the paddock falling silent as Schwantz crossed the line in third place. For the old guard, it was a gut punch. A brand new bike, engineered by a team willing to throw out the rulebook, had just gone toe-to-toe with the best in America's toughest race. In the garages afterward, mechanics pored over the GSX-R, searching for secrets. Journalists scrambled for quotes. Schwantz, grinning and mud-spattered, shrugged off the fuss. For Suzuki, this was vindication. The gamble on radical engineering had paid off. Not someday, but right now. That single result sent a jolt through the industry. The GSX-R was no longer just a bold idea. It was a threat, and every racer and dealer in the country knew it. From the late 1990s into the next decade, the GSX-R did not just win races, it owned them. From 1999 to 2009, Suzuki claimed 9 out of 11 AMA Superbike championships. Trackside, the blue and white bikes became a fixture at the front, their presence so routine that rivals started measuring their own progress in fractions of Suzuki's lap times. The pattern was not limited to pro circuits. At club races across America and Europe, grids filled with GSX-Rs in every displacement, from battered 600 models to fire-breathing 1,000 machines. Privateers and weekend racers gravitated to the platform because it worked straight out of the crate, reliable, predictable, and forgiving enough to take a pounding on Sunday and ride home on Monday. This era saw the GSX-R transform from a bold experiment to the default choice for anyone serious about winning. The 1996 SRA-D model, with its twin-spar frame and compact engine, set the tone for the next generation. But it was the relentless refinement and accessibility that made the difference. By 2001, the GSX-R 1000 had arrived, raising the bar again with over 160 horsepower and a curb weight that embarrassed the competition. Suzuki's engineers did not chase gimmicks. They delivered steady, usable gains that translated into results. As the victories piled up, so did the sales. The GSX-R was not just a race bike anymore. It was the backbone of track days, amateur leagues, and street rides. Its reputation for durability and speed drew in thousands of new owners every year. For a decade, the GSX-R was the standard by which all other sport bikes were judged, and for many, it was the only bike that mattered. Dealerships across the country watched their showrooms fill with GSX-Rs as Suzuki ramped up production in the early 2000s. Factory incentives and aggressive pricing strategies pushed these bikes into the hands of more riders than ever before. A brand new GSX-R could be had for around $8,000, thousands less than some European competitors. But the real shock came on the used market, where only a few years after leaving the showroom, clean examples were trading for $3,000 to $4,000. For many dealers, the numbers told the whole story. One manager recalled that they just kept coming. Every truckload more GSX-Rs, and Suzuki wanted volume, and they got it. Another dealer described the shift, saying they went from selling to racers and track guys to seeing high school kids with enough for a down payment. The flood of inventory forced shops to cut deals just to clear space, sometimes offering zero-down financing or throwing in gear to sweeten the sale. The GSX-R, once a prize for serious riders, became accessible to anyone with a modest savings account or decent credit. For young buyers, the low cost meant the risk of a crash did not feel like the end of the world. If a bike went down during a stunt or a late-night street race, it could be replaced for less than the price of a used car. This affordability, combined with the bike's reputation for speed, brought a new crowd through dealership doors, riders more interested in adrenaline than lap times. Dealers, for their part, Watch the transformation unfold, knowing that every discounted sale made the GSX-R more common and a little less exclusive with each passing year. The numbers on paper barely hint at what happens when things go wrong. For one longtime rider, the reality hit on a warm Saturday afternoon, just outside the city. He had owned his GSX-R for years, drawn in by its reputation, seduced by the rush of speed and the sense of control it promised. But on that day, a missed shift and a patch of gravel at the wrong angle sent the bike sliding out from under him. The crash was quick, violent, and left him with a battered shoulder, broken ribs, and a memory that refused to fade. Recovery took months. The bike was repairable, but something in him wasn't. He sold the GSX-R not long after, handing the keys to a younger man who seemed eager for the same thrill. The old riding jacket, once a badge of pride, stayed in the closet. What lingered most wasn't the pain, but the realization that it could have been worse, much worse. He started wearing all the gear, every ride, no matter the weather. Friends noticed the change. He spoke quietly about the crash, never with bravado, always with a kind of gratitude for getting a second chance. That story played out in thousands of garages across the country. The GSX-R's appeal was obvious, but so was its cost when skill or luck ran out. For some, the lesson came too late. For others, it led to a vow: never again without full gear, never again mistaking the bike for a toy. The numbers in the insurance files and hospital records each hid a human story. A moment when the promise of the ultimate machine collided with the limits of flesh and bone. Parking lots once echoed with the sound of revving GSX-Rs, front wheels clawing skyward as small crowds circled in the dusk. Stunt crews like Starboys turned these after-hours sessions into legend, filming wheelies, stoppies, and burnouts on battered GSX-Rs and pressing the footage onto grainy DVDs. What started as local bravado soon found a new stage. By the mid-2000s, YouTube exploded onto the scene, and with it, the reach of these stunts multiplied overnight. Clips that once circulated among friends now racked up millions of views in months. The Ghost Rider videos, grainy helmet cam footage of a lone rider threading traffic at impossible speeds, became internet folklore, shared from Sweden to Texas, each upload adding fuel to the fire. GSX-Rs appeared in viral compilations, the riders pulling wheelies through rush hour traffic or fleeing police in cities they would never visit. The bike's affordability and raw power made them the weapon of choice for anyone chasing online fame. A single reckless run could turn an unknown rider into a minor celebrity. Their username shouted in comment sections and mimicked in parking lots across the country. Stunt crews began to chase not just adrenaline, but digital notoriety. The goal was clear: go bigger, go faster, get more views. By 2006, some of these videos were crossing the 1 million view mark, a scale that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. As the audience grew, so did the stakes. Riders started pushing limits for the camera, knowing that every close call or near miss could bring another wave of subscribers. The GSX-R, once a symbol of engineering ambition, now wore a different badge, one shaped by viral chaos and the endless scroll of internet feeds. The reputation that had been built on racetrack victories and technical breakthroughs was suddenly rewritten in pixels and comment threads. In the span of a few years, the GSX-R's global image was no longer defined by what it could do on a circuit, but by what it could survive on the street. Insurance companies began to notice patterns that could not be ignored. By the late 2000s, internal actuarial tables showed GSX-R models were involved in a disproportionately high number of claims compared to other sport bikes. In some regions, GSX-R riders accounted for nearly a third of all sport bike-related accident reports, despite making up a much smaller share of bikes on the road. Industry analysts trace this overrepresentation to the flood of younger, less experienced owners drawn by low prices and the viral allure of stunting. The result was a spike in single-vehicle crashes, high-speed collisions, and claims involving unlicensed or minimally trained riders. Hospitals near major cities began tracking a similar trend. Trauma registries from the mid-2000s listed GSX-R models among the most common bikes involved in severe motorcycle injuries. Emergency room staff quietly referred to certain models as frequent flyers. In one metropolitan trauma center, admissions linked to GSX-R accidents rose by more than 25% over a 5-year span, outpacing the overall growth in motorcycle registrations. Some doctors, when interviewed by local news, cited the bike's reputation for attracting risk-takers as a factor in the rising toll. Insurance premiums responded in kind. By 2010, major carriers had introduced targeted surcharges for GSX-R owners, with some policies costing 20% to 30% more than equivalent coverage for rival brands. Underwriters cited actuarial risk, not prejudice. The numbers simply did not lie. Dealers, too, felt the impact. Used GSX-R bikes, once a quick sale, began to linger on the lot, their resale value eroded by higher insurance costs and a reputation for trouble. Industry analysts summed it up with a kind of weary resignation. The GSX-R had become a statistical outlier, not just in performance, but in the consequences of its popularity. The raw data, accident rates, hospital admissions, and insurance surcharges turned a once revered machine into a cautionary tale. What started as a revolution in engineering now stood as a case study in how numbers, not opinions, can reshape the fate of an icon. Today, the GSX-R's legacy lives in a strange tension. Engineering brilliance is increasingly overshadowed by viral bravado. Social media still amplifies the loudest stunts, and perception continues to outpace reality. The gap between design intent and cultural myth grows wider every year. What we ride, and how we remember it, says more about us than any machine ever could. Share your take in the comments below.